Hey guys, welcome to the Grid week number 2. This is day number 7 of the 28-day challenge. I hope you've been reading along with us. And today we're going to talk about this upside down perspective. But first, I just want to challenge you with this thought. Most people's worldview puts themselves at the center. Most people today, whether they consciously do it or not, most people today put themselves at the top. They put other people below that. And then if there's any room for God, they put God third on the list. But we're going to see today that that's not a great way to look at it. That is a really futile mindset, a me-first mindset. Man, that could be so destructive. Proverbs 16 says, there is a path before each person that seems right, but it ends in death. I think this verse is talking about a me-first mindset that ends in destruction. People that live their lives with this me-first mentality end up alone and miserable in life. And yet it's just wired in all of us. But Jesus had a different perspective. He had a different grid, and this is what we're going to talk about today. Now we're going to take a look at Matthew chapter 22, because in that passage, some Pharisees, and these were religious leaders in Jesus' day, they were Jewish, they came to Jesus and they tried to trap him with this question. They said, of all the rules in the rule book, and they had a lot of rules, they said, which one is the most important? And the way Jesus answered this question is really surprising. The first principle that Jesus gave them was to love God. We see it in Matthew 22, 37 and 38. Jesus said, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. Now, when the Pharisees asked Jesus this question, they were probably expecting him to answer with one of the 10 commandments. I think that's how they were trying to trap him. They're trying to get him to nail down one of the commandments, and then they would say, well, what about the other 9? But Jesus outsmarted them because he didn't give them one of the 10 commandments. He gave them a principle that was above the 10 commandments. He gave them this principle that undergirded the whole commandments. He said, love God first. Now think about it. This covered the first 4 of the 10 commandments. You can go back and read those 10 commandments on your own if you want, but the first 4 commandments were all about how we relate to God. He was trying to indicate that if you get this right, then everything else falls into place. If you can learn how to love God first, you'll notice that everything else makes sense. Now, a me-first mentality, on the other hand, says, well, no, I'm going to love me first. And if there's some room for God, then that's fine. In fact, there are a lot of Christians who have a me-first mentality, but they go to church every single week. But really, they're more interested in what God can give them than in God himself. Here's the second principle Jesus gave. Love others. It's in verse 39. He says, a second commandment is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. Now, this is where I think Jesus was covering the rest of the commandments. So love God covers the first 4 commandments, but the last 6 commandments, like, honor your father and mother, and don't kill, and don't steal, and don't lie, and don't covet, all of those things are about man-to-man relationships. And so, see, here's, I think, what Jesus was framing this with. This is how he saw the world. He said, if you really want to live in the world right, if you really want to have satisfaction and freedom and joy and great relationships, get right with God, and when you get right with God, you can get right with people. It just flows. When you have a right relationship with God, you can have a right relationship with the people around you. One of the reasons for that is because God is love, and when you're in a relationship with a God who loves you, then you turn around and you begin to show that love to the people around you. And so Jesus was so clever to say, I'm not going to point out one of the 10 commandments. I'm just going to tell you this. Love God and love others. But Jesus said this in John 15, there's no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. See, Jesus didn't just preach that we should put others above ourselves. Jesus lived it. When Jesus went to the cross and died for us, he didn't do it for himself. Jesus did it for the sins of the world. If Jesus had a me-first mentality, then he would have said, you guys are all losers. Figure it out on your own. But Jesus came with love, and he poured out that love, and the ultimate act of that love was to die on the cross in our place. Now here's the third principle in Jesus' words. Love yourself Now, this might seem really strange to hear that you should love yourself, but it's really important, and it was implied in Jesus' statement because he said, love God and then love others as yourself. So if you don't love yourself, then he wouldn't have said, love others as yourself. He's expecting you to have dignity and respect for yourself. Being a Christian doesn't mean you're a doormat. Just because you put others above yourself doesn't mean that you let them walk all over you. You should have dignity and honor. And the reason you have that, we saw this last week, is because you're made in the image of God. A Christian worldview gives every human being, it doesn't matter what race, it doesn't matter what gender, a Christian worldview gives every human being dignity because you're made in the image of God. See, here's what Jesus was saying. If you put God first, then you'll get everything else thrown in. Relationship with others and proper respect for yourself. But if you put yourself first, then you won't get any of it. This is the basis of a Christian worldview. Love God, love others, love yourself in that order. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video, and don't forget to use the questions below to talk about this with your family, with your small group, or with a mentor. And we'll see you tomorrow for the next Bible reading video.